So, thank you, Kenny, for joining us. Kenny Ames, recently with Columbia Books and Information Services, where he's the Director of Business Development. Kenny and I met through the association community, and he'll perhaps talk about his experience there. Previously, he was Director of Client Relations at Red Banyan and the Director of Business Development at Fireside 21. His previous roles also include CQ Roll Call, and then 2 positions on Capitol Hill, working for Congressman Barney Frank and Congressman Steny Hoyer here from Maryland. His educational background includes a master's in government and political communications from Johns Hopkins and his undergraduate work at George Washington. And Kenny's going to be here talking about his search process, how to activate your network, and maybe a little bit of insights into the landscape for government relations, maybe. So please join me in welcoming Kenny.
Good morning. First, let me take the opportunity to thank Ken for inviting me here and all of you for joining us this morning. I never start these things with a joke, but since we have 2 professionals here with the transportation industry, my father retired and now he is in the transportation industry again. He's a driver, does the airport run, and I'm originally from Massachusetts, so he's often at Logan taking people to and from the airport. It's important that you understand that the airport is in Boston for this story. And this morning, I was on the phone with him, and he was telling me that he was taking a woman back to the airport. And she was telling him that she came to town for pleasure, but it didn't turn out that way. It's a pleasure weekend, and it didn't turn out that way. And he asked, well, why didn't it turn out that way? And she said, well, I'm a Yankees fan. To which my dad said, it was a pleasant weekend for me. So as we get going, what I want to do is make sure that we have more of a conversation, and this is very informal. If you have questions during it, please feel free to ask. I have a number of points that I want to hit, but don't feel like you can't interrupt as we go along. Anybody in the back, if you feel more comfortable getting closer, I'm comfortable with that too. This isn't a wedding. We haven't reserved the front row for bridesmaids and groomsmen. And I just want to make sure that I can be heard in the back. Can everybody hear me in the back?
Yes.
And for our videographer, after I present, we're going to have table topics, and then we're going to get into the evaluations.
Thank you.
For anybody else who's a Toastmaster, they would understand that. The last thing that I want to caveat is I'm going to share some very personal information. This is my search. Please write down any methods, but if you see any personal information up there, just understand that I'm sharing and being very vulnerable, so there might be some names or whatever that don't need to be recorded. If we're okay with that, I can go ahead and get started. I want to begin with a little bit of a survey here. How many people have a resume that looks like this?
Overall, how long is it? 2 pages?
Oh no, this one's 3. This is the long resume. This is everything I've ever done. Or maybe you have the career summary and highlights. When I began my job search, these were the 2 resumes that I put together. And I began my job search back in June when I left Columbia Books. And I decided at that time that I wanted to get back into public service. As Ken mentioned, I started my career on the Hill. I worked for 2 very prominent members of Congress, and I left the Hill to pursue opportunities in the private world. Others would see that as trying to make more money. But what I decided, and with the support of a very loving wife who's a successful attorney, I want to go back to the Hill or go into the association world. So I put together these 2 resumes that over the course of almost 20 years, I've accumulated quite a few accomplishments. These are awful resumes and need to be ditched immediately if anybody has them. What I have done is created 2 very specific resumes, both of them one-pagers. And let me show very carefully. This one here is the resume that I'm sending to Capitol Hill. If I'm applying for an LA, if I'm applying for a press secretary, any position, It's one page, it's neat. And then even under activities, it's short, but it catches a few things that people might find interesting. Marathon runner, Toastmaster. Did I have a comment?
Elite marathon runner.
What's that?
You're an elite marathon.
Absolutely.
I am not an elite
Well,
marathon
actually, for men, you're not.
Thank you.
Women, he would be.
That's pretty elite.
I'm okay. And a couple of things, but they're conversation starters.
Sure.
Who here, just raise a hand, what is the point of your resume?
Tell us where.
To get the interview.
To get the interview. That's it. That's your entire purpose of your resume. This isn't, look at everything I've done in my career. I learned this the hard way, so maybe by sharing with you, you'll understand. There are folks that I am meeting on the Hill with much more experience than I am who have one-page resume. And the thinking is, what do you need more than a one-page resume for? It's sleek, it's easy, they know how to get in touch with you, here are the highlights, and I very specifically tailored it towards that job. This is the other resume that I use. Yes?
What about applicant tracking systems? Meaning, with a single-page resume, it's hard to hit the keywords in the word cloud that is, created out like Jeff Davies, whatever it is. And I find it challenging, given those severe applicant tracking systems, to cover my bases with such a truncated resume.
For that specific purpose, then you will want the longer resume. And if you are applying to USA Jobs, ignore the one-page resume. If this is, you're emailing it, it says send cover letter and resume to this email address, which in my experience in the last almost 2 months has been 90%. There have been maybe 10% where it's submitting and then you can connect it to your LinkedIn, and then you're going through and you're trying to hit keywords because you're working on an algorithm. So there's always an exception to the rule. But for the most part, if you're submitting to an email address, the one-page resume should do just fine. Yes?
I've heard mixed things about putting your actual street address on a resume.
Yeah.
I see that on yours you put it. So in your sort of philosophy, you think it's okay to put your, rather than just saying Kenny, Washington, D.C. 20018?
Yeah, I go back and forth on that, and the reason that I go back and forth on that is before I thought, okay, you know how to contact me, I've got my, here's my email, here's my phone, here's my LinkedIn.
Right, so they can get in touch with you.
So they can get in touch with you, but I'm applying for Hill jobs, and they want to know I'm local. That's why my address is here. It may not be necessary if you're applying for an association, so that's something that you should also keep in mind.
But if you put Washington 20018, they know you're local too.
It would look, I've been working with a career coach specifically for the Hill, and I had this conversation with him, and he said a hiring manager, if your whole address isn't there, it would look weird. So that's for what I'm targeting. But it's important to keep in mind what you're targeting.
I've just heard.
No, it's a great point.
I've heard mixed things.
Until I decided I'm going back on the Hill or going to work for an association, I thought they got my email, they got my phone, they got my LinkedIn, they know how to contact me. But because of the very niche field that I'm applying to, they'd say his address isn't here, it looks weird. Does that make sense, Giovanni?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have one more.
Please.
I am very irritated at the critique of your resume reads doer, not achiever. And I see that this is a very much achiever, and I see what that means epitomized by this one-page resume.
Yeah.
It has action words and things like that versus experiential.
Yeah.
So I struggle with balancing those two things, the doer versus achiever, and doing career summary versus like, cut costs, blah, blah, blah. It sounds like an advertisement,
Yeah.
too much achiever.
Yeah.
That's sort of like.
Is that a question for
Well,
me?
yes, just like how do you how do you deal with the doer versus achiever thing, or in your experience?
In my experience, tailor it
Yeah.
towards the hiring manager in the industry. What, and may I ask, can I use you an example? What are you applying for?
Everything. Throwing spaghetti right now. No, but with health promotion, I'm doing some jobs with health policy
Okay.
and health sciences, and then, but I'm also doing things with like creative or technical writing and proposal writing, RFPs,
Okay.
like that. So, but I'm kind of up for anything. I've been in the same field for 10 years, and I just really want a new challenge. So,
Okay, and I'm going to get to this in my part of the speech when I get more towards the meat of the using your network.
sure.
And what I would say to you is talk to others and figure out what that industry, what the jargon is, what everybody else is doing. There are ways to stand out. That, for example, when I'm applying to congressional offices, every year there is the Congressional Capital Challenge 3-miler. So at the bottom of my cover letter, I write, and I can pull it up, P.S. I can help your capital.
Right.
I can help your capital challenge team. I can run 3 miles in less than 19 minutes. Hopefully, the point is to
Get
the interview. It jumps out.
So I'm curious,
Yeah.
as you say you work with a career coach. I have been as well, and completely redid my resume.
Yeah.
And it's all, what's missing here for me
Yeah.
is stats and
If you need stats, see.
numbers.
So if I go back, oops, what did I do?
Your other resumes to me I wouldn't look at. I have had very positive experience from recruiters in the last 2 weeks saying, wow, I've never seen a resume that tells such a good story.
Oh, again, I broke it.
Oops.
So what I would say is, I was going to pull up my sales. When I was in business development, I had numbers. Went from 25% to 37%, number one in market share. Yes, I used those numbers. But again, the point in the resume that I want to stress is one page, unless you're going through one of those systems and try to make it sleek. And the only point of the resume is to Giovanni,
Get the interview.
get the interview. So the one and only point is get
Right.
the interview. And you can see here, I have numbers here, 200 to 800, market share 27%, 80%.
So what's that great about your new resume? Is that 57 compliments?
It looks attractive, it looks different, and it just tells a good story. I'm different because my career has been in communications development and government relations, so I'm kind of all over the map.
Yes.
So,
Comparing your two resumes, I'm a fan of Times New Roman,
Yep.
and some people say it looks too old school, and if I'm going to commit the sin of being over 40, I can't act over 40. I should show that I'm contemporary any way I can.
Right.
So, should I, if people say Times New Roman is too old school, should I go with, comparing your two resumes, one looks more sleek and contemporary.
Yeah.
What's your advice on that?
My advice on Times New Roman is something that somebody once told me, and please don't take this personally. It's Times New Roman is the George Costanza of if he could walk around in sweats all day and is acceptable, that's Times New Roman. Now, again, you just want to get it on one page, so that's my opinion. Like any opinion, there are two schools of thought, and both of them are probably wrong.
I've heard.
Let me ask, how many people here have redone their resumes no less than 5 times?
in what period of time?
Exactly. We've redone our resumes so many times and get so many different conflicting advice. And this is a perfect segue into the meat of my presentation, is it's important to talk to your network and figure out what does your field find acceptable? Where's everybody going? You don't want to, yeah.
I know you want to get on with you.
Yeah, sure. I can pause here for a minute if we
Yeah.
want to talk more if that's what more helpful.
I'm just curious, on that same topic of times enrollment, what do you feel about people jazzing the resume up with colors and images and those type of things? Do you suggest that, or because I've had resumes where I had a little bit of color in there as well?
Do you know, when you're applying to that particular company,
Yeah.
are they a colorful company?
No.
I'll give you an example. When I was at Fireside 21, we constantly asked people to submit non-traditional cover letters. That was the instruction. And I had a friend who applied for a position there, and I told them, do not submit a traditional cover letter. So in both cases, a friend and a cousin actually, and it got them interviews. One she pretended she was on her favorite NPR show and they were doing an interview, and she transcribed it. And at my old company, they're big Star Wars nerds. And my friend designed a website pretending that Fireside was in the Star Wars universe. It got her the interview. But if they are not asking for you to be creative, there are other ways to stand out with interesting facts.
Sean, I'm sorry, no.
Chris,
my mistake.
Sorry.
To answer something that I know that happened in terms of color, well, not only printing, but I had someone I knew who decided they would jazz theirs up by saying, well, I worked at Citibank, and they put the Citibank logo,
yeah.
and they put the actual company logos up. And it made it interesting, but Citibank actually, because another person they had worked with got in touch with them, said, hey, that's a violation of copyright. And you think that, oh my God, Citibank has bigger and better things to do than contact this person. But suddenly they're saying, hey, you're violating copyright by putting our logo on your resume. But, you don't want to be sued by Citibank for just a stupid resume.
But there's a good
So be
place.
careful about time and place in terms of what you're putting color and how you're using images.
Did they get the interview?
No.
But there is a good place for the logos, and that's on your LinkedIn profile. So what I'll show with my, okay, I got it. It keeps asking me to do things here. For my experience, sleek and simple. It's got the dates. So for Columbia Books, on my resume, it has the end date of June. For your LinkedIn, if you've left someplace voluntary or non-voluntary, it's okay to keep the present for now. I mean,
My old employer made me take it off.
old employers may make you do that. Mine is not making me do that at this moment. It's just easier when you're looking for a recruiter. Recruiters are trying to find you here. So as long as they haven't told you, you can be a little lax on that. But what I haven't done, which my old LinkedIn profile, I used to have all these bullet points of what I did there. And it was useless. This is sleek, it's easy to look at, I can get through it. And you know what, if you have questions, reach out to me. Call me in for an interview. Instead of they find one bullet point and go, oh, no, we don't need that. Having been in business development for 10 years, there have been a few instances where I've talked myself into the box. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that concept, where you offer a little too much information and they go, oh. The other way to think about it is you're painting a view of the ocean. Let's assume we're all great painters. I'm not, I'm horrible, I can't even write. And I paint the beach and the ocean and some trees, some clouds, a little sun, and then a seagull. And the person I'm showing the painting to goes, oh, I don't like that seagull, I didn't foresee it in there. And the whole thing is done. So with your sleek resume and your LinkedIn profile, it's nice and sleek, and it's not giving too much information. got my education, and then I've got a few volunteer experiences, and then anybody who's given recommendations. And it's okay to go ahead and use your network and solicit those recommendations. So what I have done is, and this is my dashboard here, I've also tried to post articles, relevant articles. Some of them on, I used to give a presentation, I still can, on Inside the Congressional Mind, how to influence staffers. So I post things on that. I, last week, got published in Run Washington. I run my son to daycare and wrote an article about that, and they published it. So I shared it here. But I'm trying to get my views up and get into the eyes and on the radar of recruiters. And if you have contacted me through here, last week I got a call from a recruiter. She liked my LinkedIn profile. She asked how many people I managed at Fireside. I said 5. She said, oh, I need somebody who wants 20. And I'm glad she asked it up front because I didn't want to waste 20, 30 minutes if I'm already disqualified in that position.
Right.
Sure, if she said her client was very specific. They want somebody who's managed a team of 20. That's not me, and I'm not going to try to make it me.
I had it very similar. They wanted someone who had managed remote staff, managed about 30 remote all over the country.
Yep.
And they wanted 100.
Okay.
I'm like, okay. Good luck.
But again, I can still use my sales background to
Right.
say, yes is a good answer, but my second best answer is a very quick no. I'm not wasting any time with that company. I'm not wasting any time, resources. I'm not filling out these online job things that take 2-3 hours of my time. My favorite ones are the ones that are easy apply. I can just apply, and that's what I've been doing. Yes.
In terms of LinkedIn and actually a resume, if there's specific accomplishments
Yep.
within that job category, you don't feel it's worth it to bullet point them?
Is it going to get you the interview? That's the one question I want you to ask. What I do is I look at the job description. I copy and paste it, and then I put it into bullets. And then the ones that I have done, I incorporate it into my cover letter. If it says, for example, I applied for an energy and environmental LA with a member from Mid-Atlantic State to be as a legislative assistant. So when I was with Steny Hoyer, I talked about, back in 2000, I don't know if anybody remembers, there was an oil spill on the Patuxent River. It affected his property. I talked about the countless town halls that I went to with him. I talked about touring Calvert Cliffs nuclear power plant. I talked about when I was with Barney Frank working on Cape Wind, or LNG, liquefied natural gas, or the connection between Massachusetts Bay and the Chesapeake Bay. I very specifically tailored my cover letter to things that I knew applied. So these accomplishments, they're great to have, they're great for stories in your interview, and if you can tie them into your cover letter, use them. That's a great place to put them.
Notwithstanding the amount of effort it would take, what do you think of the idea of customizing a resume for each job you apply?
Great. Many people say you should customize the resume for every single job. I'm too lazy to do that. It's a lot of work, and for me, if I apply to 100 jobs, I might get 10 calls, which might lead to 8 interviews, which might lead to 5 second rounds, which might lead to 1 or 2 offers. And so I'm trying to maximize my numbers, increase the odds to my favor.
I'm curious what your coach said about cover letters, because more and more people are, even though they ask for them, they don't look at them, and I know as a hiring manager, I didn't look at them.
Yeah.
You just don't have the time. And
So-
so for you to tailor your cover letter and not have it in your resume, like if I was hiring you, I'd want to know in your resume that you did energy work for Steny,
Right.
if that's the kind of LA position you're applying for. I'm just curious, did your coach say anything?
We haven't
Okay.
discussed cover letter specifically.
So I would add that I look at the cover letter as just another opportunity to communicate and stand out. And we don't want to leave those on the table. Will they be read? Chances are no. Well, they certainly not read at the beginning, but it could very well make a difference between you being in the A pile and the B pile. We're moving from B to A. So I recommend do not pass up that opportunity. It should not be long. It should impact. It should be tailored. It should impact, hit on all the key points that they're looking for in that opportunity. But don't pass up the opportunity to communicate in the cover letter, because you will stand out, because 80% of people will not provide a cover letter.
Any other questions before I get into the real meat of Activate Your Network? Because that's a great tie into what I'm about to say.
Sometimes I find, especially, and I can't say necessarily only with government jobs, but I do find that there are things like, and know this piece of proprietary software.
Yeah.
And it's like, I have all the experience they're asking for. I can write a great resume and a great cover letter, but then it's like, and know the Fred Flintstone software. And I'm like, do I just omit that I don't know the Fred Flintstone software?
That ties into, do you have anybody, can you look in LinkedIn and it will tell you, do you have anybody who works there? Ask them that question. Because if they can find out for you and say, oh, no, they just need to know that you know similar software. Or, yeah, if you haven't done this, then you're disqualified.
Okay, because I'm like, sometimes I don't even bother to apply. I'm like, I can do Excel, but
and maybe
you
that's
need
a good
to know another, kind of accounting software. I mean, it's like, I don't know whether or not to even apply.
What I would do is talk about that you know accounting software, and if it's a job where you need to know Fred Flintstone accounting software, and also, is it that hard to learn? Having worked at Fireside and in sales, I'm a CRM expert. I know CRMs inside and out. And I can name a few of them that I've used, and I know many that I haven't used. But the philosophy behind all of them is the same.
Is the same.
And I can go from one to another. I assume most software is like that, but maybe some are so specific that they need that. And in that case, how long's the value proposition? How long is it going to take you to apply for the position versus not applying? Is it a 5-minute submit your cover letter and resume that's standard and ready to go? Or are you going to have to spend 2-3 hours for that one? And that's something that you'll have to figure out. So let me get into,
Go ahead. Oh no, I just had one LinkedIn thing per what you just said. Just I applied for a job and I looked on LinkedIn to see if there's anybody who worked there. Turns out it's like a buddy of mine from college who I didn't recognize because he had dreads in college and he was all clean cut. Hysterical coincidence. Met with him. He said, I'll go upstairs and brought my CV, job description. He said, I'll go upstairs and tell them. The next day I got a rejection letter, no interview, no nothing. So my question for you is, should I write the person who emailed me, the recruiter or whomever, hiring manager, and say, thank you for letting me know, what could I have done better? Do people respond to those, or should I just let it die?
Die.
Got it.
Oh wait,
Because I'm sick of dying over here, I feel like I'm throwing out flares and shit.
Just die quickly. No, die quickly and move on to the next line.
Especially if you've had no contact with them.
Right.
Here, I'll share an example. I went to GW. I applied for a position at GW through my network. I got an interview for a position that seemed like a good fit. The night before the interview, I got an email from the woman's assistant. She's had a family emergency. We have to reschedule. Okay, that happens. And she said she'd be in touch. A week later, I check in. I hadn't heard anything. And a week later, I get an email, generic email. We're moving forward with other candidates. Do I want to die? All right. Do you know what I want to do? I want to call the president and say, I am an undergrad, I am a donor, this is not how you treat me. What am I going to do?
Die.
Not a goddamn thing. Pardon me for the camera back there. What's the point?
Right.
Will it get me a job?
I guess the only point would be to get some direction on what exactly I'm missing here.
Here's something that,
Nothing, I guess.
here's something as a high extrovert, as somebody who believes everything is about me somehow, I've had to learn, it's not about you. It's not.
I teach this, and this is undergraduate at Drexel University.
Yeah.
You have to talk in the you attitude, not the me attitude.
Yeah.
And this is all books now coming out for business and science.
Yeah.
And they're saying science is taking over, and if you don't speak a you attitude, which is to the person, not I, me, I want to do this, I want to do that. You speak more positively in the you attitude, then you're networking much better.
Yeah.
Most of us don't. We're 1%, we're all in the me attitude. They want you to get to the 2%, we're in the you attitude. You don't have to read this book, but I have to teach it now. Okay.
Good. Last one, and then I'm going to get into what I thought I was talking about.
I applied for some positions with organizations where I was an absolute perfect fit for the organization and the specific position. And a few times it happened where I was really surprised I didn't even get interviews. And the only way I can think that I was not a good fit is I know that they're very youth-oriented, very under 35.
Yeah.
So, and I'm wondering, I've heard that if you leave dates off the resume, that it goes right into the bar. They don't even call you. But if you put it on there, like, this person's over 40, and that, sad to say, that does disqualify you for some positions, again,
Yeah.
right into the garbage. What's your advice on leaving dates on or off?
Put it on. If it's a youth organization and they're violating the law, what are you going to do? There's no remedy. And I'll give an example. A few years ago, and this is tough for me to say, but I was offered a job, and I happened to make an offhand comment that I get back to them on Sunday because Shabbat.
I saw ADL.
Well, you saw it somewhere?
I saw ADL, sorry.
Oh, okay. And on Monday, they reneged on the offer. They withdrew the offer. Not because of the religion, but because they needed the person to be available. And in fact, I'm not Shomer Shabbos. I just like to be able to have a little time with my family to either Friday night or Saturday do something. Okay, great. So I can call ADL, I can call EEOC, and they both can tell me the same exact thing. What they did is probably illegal, but what's the remedy? And did you want to work there anyway if they're going to do something like that? And I'm going to take this opportunity to point out there are now 3 Kens in this room.
Yeah.
So we're up to the number 3, and
Right.
if you remember nothing else, the name Kenneth in Latin means handsome. So let me get to the actual meat of activating your network and getting it to work for you. Each job on the Hill that I have applied to, I have been able to reach out to somebody and say, do you know the hiring manager? Can you connect me? And they'll give me a quick yes or no. Yes, I can forward it on. I know them, but not really well, or I don't know them at all.
Yes, well,
If we looked at LinkedIn here, I'm not going to apply for this Pfizer job, but it tells me how many alumni are there from my network. Let me see if I can find
I
someone.
know the hiring manager though. I
You talked
have.
to Okay, and for APCO, it tells me I have 7 connections here. So I can look into these connections and figure out, well, oh, okay. See, and then I would say, Jerry Ann, she helped me with giving me quotes for my thesis. I absolutely could reach out to her if I needed to, if this was a job that interested me. So when you apply for something, make sure that you're using LinkedIn and look through your contacts. Make sure that you see who's connected there. It could be a second degree. Look up the hiring manager. Are they a second degree? Who is the person that can connect you? And write a very simple, LinkedIn will provide you some language. Please personalize it. Unless you just don't care and you're trying to get through quickly. But if you care about it, personalize it. Hey, how's your kid? How was your summer vacation? I'm very interested in this don't beat around the bush. I'm very interested in this. I want to learn more. And hopefully, if you're close enough, they'll tell you. Yeah.
Just from my own experience too, I would use your network on LinkedIn before you apply for the job.
Yep.
There was a chief of staff job that I wanted at a huge global nonprofit. And I reached out to someone and
Yeah.
like, I think it's too junior for you. Let me find out about it and I'll get back to you.
Right.
And sure enough, she's like, don't apply for it. And so it was great because I didn't waste my time.
Right, and that's a very helpful piece of information. I have talked to folks on the Hill, and they've been able to tell me that's a junior position. It would look weird if you applied for it. So for me, certain position, like a staff assistant or an LC, I'm not applying. LA, I can go back in an LA. Anybody can go back as an LA and start off there. But what's important about your network that I want to impress upon everybody is to track everything. And this is my tracker. I mean, I've taken out all the names and dates, but these are my contacts. Everybody I know, go through and write, these are the people that are going to help me. These are the people that could help me. These are my close contacts. I ended up, off the top of my head, with a list of about 100. And other people, you may have 20, you may have 25. But make sure you're writing them down. And the fields that I find helpful, first, last, what's the company? You may want position, that's fine, field, how you were connected, when your follow-up was, or not how you were connected, when you connected, when you followed up. How can this person help me? Be very specific. They can introduce me to the hiring manager. They will forward my resume along. They will find out information, whatever it is. Write down how they can be helpful. And then I have a section for notes. So I'm going to go through all 4 of these tabs that I have. Does anybody have any questions on this one before I move to the next tab? The next one is targets. These are the companies that I want to work for, that I've identified. For my case, these are certain associations or certain members of Congress. When I'm asked, what issues do you want to do, and what members do you feel most comfortable working for? I typically say New England, Maryland, and Virginia. So basically the I-95 corridor. That's what I say. But if there's an outstanding member from California who's close on my issues, that would be great too. So write those targets down, identify them. I'm a big believer in tracking absolutely everything that you do, because if you didn't do it, how are you going to follow up? How are you going to stay in their mind? How many coffees have you had where afterwards you're on to the next thing and you don't even remember at the end of the day? So how are you going to stick out in their mind? I know on average when I'm having 3, 4, 5 meetings a day in a professional setting. Am I going to remember the details of the second meeting? So I have to write them down and be diligent about following up. So these coffees, I write down first, last, who they work for, what organization, what's their role, what date did I meet with them, what are the notes, what are the follow-ups. Nope, just follow up. This has been my bread and butter when it comes to trying to get back on the Hill. I've interviewed now, and this is almost 2 months, 4 or 5 different positions up on the Hill, ranging from a press secretary to an LA to a system administrator. I've had a diverse background. And then each time I've been able to meet with somebody who connects me to somebody else I didn't know. For example, I had some close friends, I've helped them get jobs in the past. Well, they were able to say, I was able to ask, who can you connect me to? I'm being broad, you should be a little more specific when you're targeting, but for the point of our discussion, I'm being a little broad. Who else can you connect me to? And they say, well, I know the chief of staff, I know the LD over in another office. It may or may not be helpful, but it keeps the line moving. So I'm having a coffee with somebody I didn't know. What am I doing? I'm expanding my network, and I'm using it to work for me. And at the end of every single one of my coffees, and I hope everybody writes this down, my last question is, what can I do to be helpful to you? And the answer, they'll be, oh, thank you, that's very kind of you. Nothing right now. Some have been a little more forthcoming. I hope you get a job up on the Hill because then I'm going to ask for a meeting. Sure, I'll take your meeting. Or, hey, I just need more allies up here. Or at an association, if I have a meeting with them. Hey, if I get a job on the Hill, what do you want? I want to be a resource to you. I want, if you handle my issue, for you to pick up the phone and ask me what my organization thinks about this. So it's not entirely transactional, but this is how DC works. It's your network working for you, and what can you do for them? The most important question I've ever asked is the first one is, what can I do for you before I have a favor to ask? And that we're all sitting here, we all need some help now. And I know everybody here has helped other people. So who have we helped? I'll pause there in case there's a question.
It's just a logistics question.
Yeah.
Do you find Google Spreadsheets works better than doing in Excel, or is it just?
So I interviewed last week for Google, so I have to say, and it would be to help members of Congress use Google well. I happen to be very proficient at Google. If you want to use a regular Excel spreadsheet, it's a preference. But for me, if I am not sitting I'm usually remote, walking around, I can access it on my phone. I can pull it up.
I would just say too, don't hesitate to contact someone who's not in your network for coffee. There's a company, he's a great networker in Montgomery County and is new to town. And
Yep.
I emailed him on LinkedIn and we're having coffee in 2 weeks.
That's a great point. I emailed randomly. I identified chiefs of staff on the Senate, who I had no contact with, but these were from states that I had identified, and every single committee, House and Senate. And the email was very brief. Thank you in advance for your time. By way of background, I worked for Congressman Steny Hoyer and Barney Frank before transitioning into the media and communications world. I'm interested in returning to congressional service. If you have time for a very informal coffee, I would be very grateful. Do you know what my success rate was? 1 out of 4. So what is that? If I emailed 25 people, that's 5 or 6 I didn't have contact with before, and now are going to, and I've met with them or they're on my schedule. And they become some of my best contacts. 3 Senate chiefs of staff who I had no contact with before. When I interview or apply for a Senate job, I email them and tell them I've interviewed or I've applied for this job. Last week, I had a reply saying, great, there's a Senate chiefs of staff meeting. I'm going to talk to them about that for you. I didn't know him 7 weeks ago. Don't be afraid to email people in a high-level position who might be helpful. They can not reply, like most of them do, but the ones that do, they'll be very valuable. And, of course, I find it essential. What jobs have you applied for? Make sure you list them. Now, for me, it's also important to keep track, since I am claiming unemployment. When did I? So that keeps track of which job I did when, and I don't know if anybody lives in DC. That's not something I feel like an expert to talk on, the DC unemployment, but it's important to track pretty much everything. At the end of every single day, I write down, what did I accomplish that day? How many of you have been in the job search for a while and you feel like, I haven't done anything today? I look at this, I've kept this going since I started. And just wrote down my accomplishments for that day. And at the end of the day, it looks pretty good. I also, again, when the Google Suites, I use Google Keep. this allows me to open. It'll open.
Is it one of the,
Oh, there. Okay, so it's Google Keep, and I use the list. This is helpful to me because every Sunday night, these are the things I want to accomplish this week. And then in the morning, I review. These are things that need to happen today. And yes, sometimes things get pushed. I think I can check this one off.
I have a question.
Yes.
I think all of this is incredibly awesome. My only concern with using this is the privacy aspect.
Yeah.
Because, is there another app that could do similar things where you don't have to worry about sharing it with the universe potentially?
it's all private, it's under your Google.
Okay, so.
Yeah, if you,
I'm just sharing it with you.
yeah, if you click
No, I get
out,
that, I get that.
if you click out, you see there's 9 dots up there, and that's where all the Google platforms are.
Uh-huh.
And the only way you get to them is if you look all the way to the right, that's Ken's, Ken's logged into his Google account.
Right.
So this list will only show up for Ken. It's not on the universe.
Okay.
If people are worried about data security, that's something else, in which case I remind myself it's not about me. Who cares?
Right.
Milk, eggs, bread.
Right.
What does Russia care about that? Yeah.
Volunteer work, particularly as you're looking for a job and you're employed right
Yeah.
now. And I've heard it's great to have, substantive volunteer work to demonstrate, you're still in the market and making a contribution. Particularly in your case, as you're looking for congressional position, I would think that some sort of campaign volunteer position would be really valuable.
And on my resume, I list my campaign experience that I send up there. I have also considered taking a fellowship, an unpaid fellowship. I've also considered, the one thing I is supportive as my wife is, I can't go on a campaign and leave her with our 2-year-old son. I could, but I'd come back, she wouldn't be there. Yeah.
Question about hierarchy of to-do lists and the power of sort of writing versus having typed things. So first, I have whiteboards posted around the house, 4 of them,
Yeah.
for different to-dos. Anything from creative to avocational to higher projects. But the other thing is I find even with that little cute system in place, my to-do list become 30 items long very quickly. And it
Yeah.
could be anything from get a sponge from CVS to make a portfolio for this person to collaborate.
Yeah.
It's like, so I have trouble with that. In your experience, do you have a certain way, a golden rule for your to-do list to get as much accomplished as possible?
Do I have a golden rule? Do I consider an accomplishment? Is it a task? Will I forget it? If it's something that I would forget or that's very important, I want to write it down. And if you use handwritten versus something online, that's purely personal. For me, I want to be able to access it while I'm mobile. I like the feeling of check, that's crossed out and that's done. I think a few times in there, I don't think I've ever wrote made the bed this morning. There was one morning I didn't make the bed, and
What was the name of the Google component you're using for your to-do list?
Keep, K-E-E-P.
I have another suggestion. There's an app called Evernote.
Evernote, I've heard of that.
Seems like that, yeah. And I think it's free. And there is a premium version, but I think you can probably get away with using the free version for most of what we do.
Before Keep, I was using Things.
You can't do a list in Evernote.
Oh, you can't?
That's the part that was kind of cool, was how you doing a list in Evernote.
Yeah.
So let me make sure that I've checked everything that I wanted to talk today. The one thing I wanted to stress is track everything. And this is not my strong suit, tracking things. I don't like to make Excel spreadsheets. I don't like to write things down. I like to be, I'm an ENFP, so I'm distracted by shiny objects. Ooh, let's go over here. Ooh, I haven't thought about this. That's why I have to be so detailed about what I've done. I use Google Keep as my to-do lists, and each week I archive the last one. And I copy it, then I archive it and change the date. So anything that doesn't get done, and I know there are some things that aren't going to get done that week, but I don't lose them. I'm also very good in Gmail. When I send an email, sent using the Remind Me function, it'll pop up. Is anybody using Gmail?
Yeah.
Okay.
How's it work?
So in the Gmail function, and I think I'm on.
You're still there, I think if you. click
No,
on-
I'm on my computer.
Oh.
All right, there's no great way to put, this is on, so this is the inbox. And on some of these, I'm able to hit snooze until. And if I email somebody, you know, all right, I need to follow up with them in a week, I'll snooze it for that day if they don't reply back. How many people have had that example where you email somebody and you know they're going to get back to you and then they just don't? So you have to follow up and email them. Oh, sorry, I was on vacation. How many people are getting, I was on vacation this summer? How inconsiderate is that? I need you here now.
Pertaining to job applications, how do you apply that? Meaning, if you apply for something, when do you follow up after the initial thank you for whatever? And if it's been 2 weeks, do you email again and say, just wondering if I'm still a candidate?
Are you asking, have they contacted you?
Meaning, after you do an interview,
After an interview?
and then you send in a thank you note,
Yeah.
and you're waiting, and you're waiting, and you're waiting, when do you put a reminder to follow up with them, if ever?
That's like the answer I'm going to give you is an art critic. When do you feel like, the art critic, you look at, this feels about right, I like how this looks.
Sure.
What's the feel that you got from the interview? The example that I give, I applied for an association job downtown. He asked for references, said it was early, but he wanted to do it early in the process. So I met with him late in July. And on Friday, I emailed to say, hey, I'm still very interested in this. And he wrote back very quickly and said, thank you, we will be in touch. What I have found out was they're hiring for my position that I applied, but somebody senior up submitted their resignation and is going somewhere else. So now he has 2 positions that he has to fill, and he's new to the organization, so he's doing an evaluation of his needs. Has nothing to do with me. I just followed up to say, I'm still interested. He replied, thank you, and there's nothing else I can do from now other than wait.
Yeah.
I have a question about references. Some people ask for the references early on, and I'm reluctant to give the references only because I don't want to wear out my references. So I don't want people to be calling this person 12 times before they decide that they want to hire me. I mean, typically that's done after they've had the conversation with you, they've decided that you've got the skills, you're a good fit, and they just want to make sure that you're not an axe murderer and that you've got, that other people have your back as well. And that's when that should be done. I'm concerned when people ask for it early on and they call the references before you've even had the interview, or they want to do that. And that, to me, sounds backwards. How have you dealt with that if you've even, encountered that?
Can I give you an answer that may make you a little uncomfortable? Are you okay with that?
Sure.
Has this situation ever happened to you?
Where, I don't know. That's the thing. I want to keep it.
Well, you said that your concern was not bothering or overusing your references?
Correct.
Has any of your references ever said to you, you're overusing me?
No, but I'm not sure that they would if that were the case. They may not come back to you. They may just not respond. You see what I'm saying? And you don't know if they don't respond.
I think you're worried about a problem that doesn't exist, if I can be frank with you.
Okay.
And how you use your references is up to you, but my references.
Okay.
They're my advocates. They know me in and out. They love me. They're happy to talk to as many people as possible to help me land a job.
Okay.
That's what I found most people's references are. And usually you got 3 or 4, or maybe you have a wider network where depending upon the type of job, you can use different references. I've never experienced or had that where you're overusing a reference. That's my own, if you feel differently, then you have to proceed as you feel. Does anybody want to weigh in on this from experience?
Just to be cautious, I'm gonna put snow tires on my car today also. Down the bottom here, is that the beginning of a thank you email letter? Or
No, that's Ken's correspondence. This was my own preparing for this. I just wanted to make sure that I touched on all of these.
So after you meet somebody for coffee, you would follow up with an email?
I follow up with email. Thank you for your time. This is what we talked about. Thank you for doing what you promised to do. And then I wait five days. I don't know why 5. I guess I'm still a big fan of the movie Swingers. 5 days. And then I say, did you do that? It's a reference.
I have 2 questions. One, I still use Hotmail.
Okay.
It still works. I've had it now for probably 14 years, 20 years, I don't know, but.
What's your Hotmail address?
GIOCAPP, the first initials of my name.
It's not teddy bear and
No.
Okay. And I don't know why teddy bear. I saw Christopher Robin on the way in.
Okay. So I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
Okay. It's your name.
Yes, it's my name. And the thing is, I haven't changed it because it's sort of like my phone number. People know it. It's my email, and it's been consistent.
Okay.
But some people are like, Hotmail? You're trying to get a job with a Hotmail?
You can have more than one email.
And you can also.
But the thing is, I've tried Gmail and I've never I don't like the way Gmail writes. I don't like the way it.
Yeah, it sucks, but
Have you thought of using an email client where you can have your email from different servers go all into one area, that's what I use. Sorry,
Maybe, I think.
Yeah, get a Gmail engine, just have it forwarded to Hotmail if that's the platform you prefer.
Yeah.
I think Hotmail, you do run, not to speak for you, Kenny, but I mean, we've heard this from many other speakers before, Gio, you know this. It labels you. It
Just like
labels you as a
I was just going to
20th
say
century professional.
AOL.
Because I actually have.
AOL is.
I actually have a
CompuServe.
I have a Gmail as well. It's actually GIOCAPP at Gmail. But when I've used it, I don't like the layout. I don't like.
Let me ask you this. If
So I
you
don't
just use
use
your
it.
Gmail for your job search, every time you check Gmail, you can go, ooh, who's replied to me today? What interviews do I have? And then for your personal stuff, you can keep using Hotmail.
Okay.
And you don't have to.
You don't have to.
You don't have to get a new email. You don't have to tell people that have your Hotmail account, your new email, it'll automatically forward, and then the email back to them would be your Gmail.
Oh, it's okay. Now the second question.
Oh,
I
right,
have,
second question, and then we'll go to.
Maybe it's not quite related, but I had a job, the first interview, part of it was because I did writing. They said, okay, we want you to write, because it was a corporate communications job, can you write us a 6-month advertising plan for our company in the next, I think it was 48 to 72 hours, so that, we can see the product, to see the quality of your work. And, I was really, I did it, but I also,
Did they call you back?
No.
when they
Okay.
took your product.
And they took my product.
Okay.
I felt kind of screwed, frankly.
I've had
So
that
this is
happen.
where my sales experience comes in.
Okay, please.
Where I would come back and say, let's pretend I go ahead and do that. What happens then? If you want to know the future, bring it to the present. If I go ahead and do this assignment, what happens then? Am I going to get the job? Am I going to be a finalist? Why are you asking me to do this? Also, use your network. Did you know anybody who worked there? Can you ask, why are they doing this? This is a lot of time. I've done this before. It was a lot of time. I applied for a job once and they asked me to write a business development plan. And it was great. I wrote a great plan.
It was, and it should have been, it was like consulting work.
Raise your hand if you think I got called back for that one. No, I got they discontinued this position. They're not going to fill it at this time.
Because they got the solution.
That's right. I hope you didn't.
Oh, sorry, I was going over here.
Sorry.
To answer the specific question that you had about experiences with calling references, because this is such a good one, I have the same issue, and the pros and cons, when they want not just your resume and writing samples in advance,
Yeah.
but also 3 references and their contact information.
Is this an online? Some of the established companies, they have online, submit some references. I have some very standard people that love me, know me. I use them.
That's just it. My 3 references, my 3 key references
Yeah.
are wonderful, great experiences. They're the kind of people that are going to definitely definitely move things forward for you, say glowing things.
Yeah.
I did have an example. In the pros and cons column, what makes me very selective about, instead of treating a job like a game of numbers, I realize I'm putting my references out there for a lot of them. So I really scour the position, like, is that a wish list before I apply?
Yeah.
To see, what are my chances of getting this job? Because this is, on the pros and cons, one reason I'm reluctant to do it is because I did have a recruiter where they had young people making these contacts that had absolutely disrespectful phone manners and practices. They badgered one of my references by calling him and emailing him 4 times in one morning.
Yeah.
Without giving him enough turnaround time, which makes me look horrible. It's like the badgering's coming from me when I never would have disrespected his time in that life. And the tone they took with me on the phone, that whiny, that younger people do indeed use these days. I'm like, if they're acting entitled and snotty with me while they're courting me, how are they speaking to my references?
Yeah.
So that's the reason I'm reluctant. The only reason I do it is this. Somebody said to me, you're competing against people who will give those references out. And if you send your material in and you don't give them what they want, it's going right in the garbage.
It sounds like the question, would you want to work there in the first place if they act that way? You have to answer that.
Well,
if you get the job, would you be happy there? It sounds like,
This was a recruiter, and while they connected me with a great company,
yeah.
and I would have been great if I had been dealing directly with that company, the recruiter was so unprofessional that they interfered with the relationship,
Yeah.
and it made me really reluctant to deal with recruiters. If I'd been dealing one-on-one with this company, I'd be working there full-time with them now. They
I
absolutely
appreciate-
undermine the process.
Yes, and we all have examples of unfair, where we feel taken advantage of. I want to try to shift back towards the focus of my speech on activating your network. So what's our hard stop time, Ken?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. So if we can, any final questions to the presentation in the network? Yes, you have an action.
So I was going to talk about, so in regards to some jobs.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
So there are some jobs where they require you to do a task. I know we talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
So there are some jobs where you just have no way. Like they're going to ask, okay, they like your resume. They're like, look, you're going to do this task. So like I know you said there is something you have to perform. You wrote a business plan. But there are some jobs that I realize like you're going to have to do it or else they won't consider you for the next process. That's what I wanted to say.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing. Ma'am.
I hope you didn't cover, I don't think you cover this. Really specific questions about the coffee dates. Are they, they're always in person, or if the person just wants to do it on the phone?
You can take it on the phone,
And
and if they are too busy and they're happy to do it on the phone, take the phone one. I've set them up where it was supposed to be on the phone, and the morning of, it was up on the hill, I said, hey, I happen to be here, would it be convenient if I swung by, or do you want to keep it as a coffee? I
so
put
you
it
just
on
can
that.
offer like in person, on the phone, and then
The Hill is very
Yeah.
niche, where I can sit in the cafeteria and it's perfectly normal.
yeah, and I can't remember the other question. Yeah, thanks.
Oh, and Ken, I hope you'll share my email if you guys didn't see it up there, in case anybody has any follow-up questions or want to see anything further. Do we have any final questions before I close? Last question.
I'm just full of questions today.
And we can talk offline
Yeah,
later.
no, going back to that issue where, they ask for a sample of your work, you give it, and then they, you just snatch it. Also, oh, thank you for spending,
Yeah.
3 weeks putting together this wonderful proposal. Oh, we just decided not to hire for that position. I've had that happen before. Is there a way that you can keep that from happening? I've asked this question before, and the answers I've gotten are, don't give them so much information that they can actually do it themselves. Just give them the main points, and then if they want to discuss it, they can do it with you. I don't know how you feel about that answer, and what your experiences might have been with that same situation.
My experiences is I've been a sucker before,
Yeah.
and I've done all the work, as everybody here has done, and now my philosophy is I want to use my network, find out, does anybody work there? What's the company's reputation? Would I want to work there? Seriously, I know sometimes we're like, oh man, I got to get something, but would this be putting me in another bad situation, another bad company on my resume? So most of the good ones, they're not going to ask you to do stuff like that, in my experience. Now, there may be some real technical things where you have to demonstrate that, yeah, I'm an accountant and I don't confuse 3s and 8s. That's probably bad. So let's talk offline. I'm going to close for Ken as I'm getting. So I want to make sure I reiterate, make sure you track everything. You don't have to do the way that I did it. I was just sharing what works for me, but track it somehow. Make a list of tasks, accomplish them, check them off. Use your network, expand it, meet people, reach out to people that aren't currently in your network. Ask them to connect you to somebody else. And one-page, neat, clean resume. Oh, I didn't get to this. Focus in and you'll catch more. I was out all over the place. Yeah, I'll do this, yeah, I'll do this. Once I said, I want to be on the Hill, or I want to be on the association, now people understand. Now they know how to help me. But if you're like, yeah, I could do a bunch of things, then the coffee will go, well, that's nice. I'm glad that we caught up. Targets, list of coffees, track your jobs that you've applied for. Yep, I'm a Gmail fan. Oh, and the follow-up to your network. Send an email once a week, maybe every other week. These are the jobs I interviewed for. These are the jobs I applied. Who do you know? Can you help? And also make sure that you ask, what can you do to be helpful? I thank you for your time this morning, and please connect with me if you have questions afterwards.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Learned a lot, so thank you. I just want to underscore some of the points Kenny made, which is we want to turn this paradigm around. Too many of us sit at home in front of our computers, fiercely monitoring LinkedIn and our email, hoping that the next email that comes through is going to be the job that we want. And we know that's not the way it's going to work. Activating your network, being proactive, identifying that target list of organizations that you want to go after, and then finding connections into those organizations, that's the critical piece. Finding what I call, Marnie's heard me say this before, a side door. You can't just be in the flood of people that are going in the front door, resumes at abc.com. You have to, as Kenny pointed out, find a connection, a way into the organization that helps you stand out. So Kenny made a lot of points that we reiterate in our programs here at 40 Plus. So thank you, Kenny, for a terrific presentation and some really helpful ideas. Please share your feedback. It's very important to us. We're going to do a little drawing. One of our friends has donated this exciting book, The Big Book of Apps. because yes, there are apps for everything, from running our job search to the task lists and the reminders that we mentioned before. So we're here in a new month, here in August. So who has an August birthday that hasn't happened yet, that's coming up in August? Any other August birthdays here? Sir, Sean, when's your birthday?
The 21st.
Early present from 40 plus. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. So once again, first time folks, so people who haven't first time in a long time, first timers.